everyone. Welcome to Afro Swag Media and Magazine. We are so happy to have you tonight as we discuss this very important topic when it comes to the media and Black representation in today's world. Welcome to the show. Please invite your friends, your colleagues to join the broadcast. We are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. Join the broadcast. Share this broadcast in many Facebook groups so that more people can join tonight. Welcome to the show once again. This is in honor of Black History Month. We have several discussion panels, and today it's about media and Black representation. Please invite people to join us. Share the broadcast. We are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And if you have any questions also, please put it in the comment box so that we can get that address. Without further ado, let me bring to the screen our special and esteemed panelists. Hello, welcome to the show. Welcome to Afro Swag Media and Magazine. We are live on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We will get started with introductions. So, on my right side, I have Miss Terry Sanders. Do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. I'm Terry Sanders, publisher of the Omaha Star newspaper, locally here in Omaha, Nebraska. I've been publisher for the last 3 years, and Omaha Star is the only Black newspaper in the state of Nebraska. And this year, 2023, on July the 9th, we will be 85 years old.
Wow,
Yeah,
congratulations.
this paper has been published only by Black female publishers. So I think that is of note. Thank you for having me.
That's amazing. It's an honor to have you. Next, Waverle.
Yes, hi. My name is Waverle Monroe. I am an anchor reporter at KETV, Omaha's news leader. And I've been with KETV since 2017. I'm an Omaha native. So working here and working in the community I grew up in is a really big passion of mine. And just kind of continuing to tell Black stories. Hopefully not competing too much with Terry in the process. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thank you so much. We are so grateful to have you tonight. Next, I have Monique.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Monique Farmer. I am the owner and president of Avant Solutions. We are a PR communication firm, and I believe we are the only women-owned, Black-owned PR communication firm in the state of Nebraska. I will certainly wait for somebody to challenge me on that if there's somebody else that I'm aware of. We do communication strategy, media relations, media training, and we support executive communications for nonprofit and small to medium-sized businesses here in the state of Nebraska and across the country. So I'm excited about this discussion this evening.
Wow, thank you so much for joining us. It's amazing to have the only one in each, the first one in each category. It's amazing. Next, William King. You're on mute.
I think he's having sound issues. I see in the chat that he is saying he can.
Oh, okay. Do you want to unmute yourself? Oh, here.
Okay, what? I'm good.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Let me put my glasses on because I got bifocals. William King from Media King Communication, also 95.7 The Boss. I'm glad to be here with you ladies here tonight. Was that it? Is that okay?
Yeah, so we are happy to have you. Thank you so much for joining. And let's get started. So I think I'm hearing some echo. Can everyone hear me? Well, okay. All right. So we don't really need data to notice that there are a few guys in this industry, right? Can you tell us why we have few minorities in communication, media, PR, or this type of industry?
Um, well, overall, there's not a lot of black-owned media. Um, Probably Byron Allen probably the largest owner, media owner, as far as across the country, as far as radio and TV companies. Byron Allen. As far as black owners in radio, I know it's probably less than 70 across the country. I don't know how many is in TV. Um, right now, I know there's organizations in DC advocating for ownership. I mean, MMTC out of Washington DC. I work closely with them, advocating minority ownership in those disciplines. But with Media King, I own an internet company and different type of radio, but still broadcast on the FM dial. We broadcast in Wi-Fi, and so my interests have been in that side and building our internet infrastructure. And right now we're in Macy, Nebraska, on the Indian Reservation. We represent the poorest city in Nebraska. We develop a relationship with the Omaha tribe, and so our focus have been more on the internet side since we have our radio station's been around 8 years. Of course, we need to continue to grow that, but our focus has been on the internet side because there's hundreds of millions of dollars that's available right now for build out in rural areas, and that's where our current target is. But also, we're targeting here in Omaha because we want to make sure that we own our own infrastructure instead of just owning just regular stuff. No, we really got to really look at utilities, and internet is a utility. And so I'm probably one of the only black men in the country that own an internet company and a radio station. And so I get calls all the time. Just got back from Colorado, meeting with senators out there to build infrastructures, how we can partner out there. And so I'm taking advantage of that right now because of the opportunities that exist.
Well, congratulations on your accomplishment. Um, Terry Sanders.
Yes. So, as I said before, the Omaha Star is 85 years old this year. I'm going to turn my monitor down. There are approximately 238 black newspapers around the country. Our trade association is the NNPA, the National Newspaper Publishers Association, and we meet about 4 times a year. The NNPA is located in Washington, D.C., headed by Dr. Benjamin Chavis, who formerly was head of the NAACP and some other organizations that is about racial equity and Black power. Our founder was Mildred Brown, and she was at the table when the NNPA was started. So it is certainly an honor to be at that table again.
Oh, I think I was muted. Thank you so much, Ms. Sanders. Monique?
Sure, I'll go. Okay, and I don't hear the echo anymore, so that's perfect.
Yes.
I can speak specifically to the public relations side of that world from what I see on the ground in the classroom as a college professor. And so initially, when we even think about the full gamut of the diversity breakdown within our industry, our representation is about 8%. Now that's minority representation across the PR industry. That's not just only capturing Black representation. So that number is much smaller. One of the challenges I think we deal with early on in terms of, high schoolers trying to figure out what kind of career they want to be in. They often don't even get introduced to advertising and public relations until they're already in college. We know that it's a challenge across the industry. We've had national discussions about ways that we can get this potential career opportunity in front of students much earlier. They learn about journalism, they learn about some of the specializations inside journalism, but they don't often learn about the communication career field and the different specializations there, the career ladders and opportunities. So when I'm in the classroom, often when I'm teaching them all of this, it's soup to nuts, right? Like it's their very first time, they're very nascent in terms of what they're learning, and they really get excited about the possibilities. So I can speak for our industry. We know that we have work to do in terms of creating awareness, particularly amongst our minority populations, about our career field as a possibility for them.
Yes, Waverle?
Yeah, I can't speak too much from a manager's perspective because I'm not. But basing off of what Monique was saying about school, a little background about me is I went to Buffett Magnet Middle School, and they specialize in communications. So in 7th grade, I was exposed to what they called BBTV. I sat on a anchor desk. I reported stories, the stories that you report when you're in 8th grade. And things like that. I had no intention of being a reporter, being a journalist until I took that class. And it had such an impact on me that I thought about it all the way until I got to college. And when I took classes at UNO, I was the only person of color that followed through with all 4 years of broadcasting. I think we started off and then it kind of dwindled. So I would say that exposure when you're young can really open those doors. It definitely did for me. Otherwise, I think I'd probably be going to law school right now because that's what I wanted to be, was a lawyer. So that's my take on that.
Wow, that's impressive. Next question. So, are there any steps that you guys are taking to increase diversity and representation of Black people in your media outlet? It doesn't matter if you are in a manager role or whatever your position is. Can you tell us about anything that you're doing, even if it's through speaking engagement, whatever it is? Even I'm going to give the example of Waverly. I know so many people just by watching you on TV, they get inspired. Like, we've never seen that before in the past, I don't know, 15 years. It's new. And we love seeing that. So anyone can answer the question. Who goes first?
I can go ahead and go first this time. So I think that when I came to KETV, we had Chin Don, who's Vietnamese. We had a woman who was Latina, and we had myself, and I think another Black person at the time. Chin decided to go elsewhere, and I made it a point to go into my news director's office and say, like, hey, we're losing a person of color in our newsroom. And I think it's really important, not to discredit our white counterparts, but if we could find someone who's just as qualified to fit the position that is also brings some kind of diversity, whether that's through religion, whether that's through the color of their skin, whether that's through, a part of the world that they're from. I was like, even an international, that it's some type of diversity that could just really elevate us as a newsroom, but also bring in a perspective that we don't already have. And so that's something that I did just because I felt a little isolated when Chin left, even though we don't share the same skin color. It was like there was another person of authority that was of color in the newsroom. And so, but yeah, and then also I think that, to give KETV credit where credit is due, I think that they do a really good job of trying to bring in diversity when they can. We had DeLon Dillard, We had, we have Jonah, we have Kaylee was just promoted into an anchor position. So she's getting more on air time. And so I just think that, even voicing those concerns, even if they don't go anywhere, which I think that they did for me anyways, but I think it was just important for me to express that and let it be known within my workplace.
Thank
I
you.
can hop in next if it's appropriate. I think one of the things that, and I know each of us are doing this in our own way, but I feel very strongly about mentorship and being there to support that next generation of people who are going to hopefully come and replace us so that we can retire, right? And not really retire, but like ease up on what we do every day. That's part of our, internal and inherent passions already. One of the ways that I personally do that again is being in the classroom. I got that teaching bug in about 2016 and I've kept it the whole way through. So I'm teaching just one course right now because it can become overwhelming, especially when you're teaching writers and having to grade 30 papers once a week or twice a week. But I just think it's very important for the younger generation to be able to see and have access to call and ask questions, feel like they do have someone who looks like them that they can aspire to be in a field like this, right? So for me, I have a very strong passion point for that, especially and particularly because I've worked in places and spaces where that just did not exist for me. I spent the first 12 years of my career in federal government, and I worked for U.S. Army Corps of Engineers at the time. We covered a 10-state region, and I was it in terms of a communication professional who represented that division. So I feel very, very strongly about when we have the opportunity, it is important for us to make the time to be able to support and provide advice and counsel to that next generation of professionals coming behind us.
Thank you. Terry, we can hear you.
Sorry about that. Right now, the Omaha Star is owned by the Mildred D. Brown Memorial Study Center, which is a 501c3 organization. We purchased the paper in 2019, and the organization was started in 2007 with the sole purpose of exposing young people to the professions, with an S, available in journalism. And in 2007, it was radio, television, and newspaper. And of course, now it has just exploded and it's so many more things. It is PR, which I have to backtrack and say that was my major when I was in college 100 years ago. And it has certainly opened itself up and given me different avenues. But that PR marketing background, if you have it, you never lose it. And I constantly use it in promoting the paper. But one of the programs that we sponsored, the junior journalism program, due to COVID, for the last 2 years, we haven't done a lot with it. But this year, we are kicking it off and hoping to offer students not only training, but opportunities to write and be published. In the last couple of years, Jesuit Middle School, the boys there that were 7th and 8th grade wrote articles, and if they sent them to me, I published it. I think that it is important when you go forward in the profession. Certainly, people want to see that you've been published or that you have some experience. Wow, what would it have been for Waverle to have her own B-roll from the 8th grade? I mean, that is unheard of, but that is what we strive to do here at the Omaha Star, to bite young people when they're young so that they have the urge to continue.
Wow, that's amazing. William, you're on mute. We still can't hear you. Well, it seems like we're having some technical issues here. Um, we'll maybe if you can disconnect and come back. Moving on to the next question. So, how do you address and confront instances of racial bias and discrimination in your workplace and coverage, if there are any, or if you have experienced any?
I'm happy to hop in on that. If we have, not probably not if we have. Um, and this is tough, right? Because it depends on, to Waverly's point, a lot of this depends on where you are along your career ladder journey. How much risk are you willing to take? I think for those of us who've been in this for a couple decades, right? You're a veteran, you maybe have a little bit more liberty to speak up and speak out and support. Whereas if you're entry level, you have got to pretty much shell proof yourself and keep it moving to some extent.
Mhm.
You've got to figure out how to pick your battles. So I will just speak on behalf of myself personally. I probably, even when I was more junior in my career, just because of my personality, have never really had an issue with getting a private meeting with someone if I feel like there's an issue that we need to have a discussion about. I do think that it is important to call those things out, to share our feelings about some of the things that we're experiencing, and to some extent potentially educate someone who may have been completely oblivious to an offense that happened in the workplace, whether it was to you personally or to someone else if you witnessed it. I think there are opportunities to give grace to people and to assume positive intent. But I mean, I would just speak on specific instances where that may be merited. In terms of coverage on the PR side of the world, I think that's most of the time top of mind. There are some areas I think I become more cognizant toward through my own personal experiences. And I'll just share one recent one. I had surgery on my foot in December, and I had to travel last month. And so just some of the experiences I had navigating the airport during travel, and just experiencing needing ADA support and probably not having 5-star support that whole journey, really opened my eyes to just the experience of what that's like to be someone who can't just get up and walk around. And so I think it's easier to find places of empathy when you've been through something. But I think if we can push ourselves to try to sit in the seat of someone else's, religious experience, or someone else's walk through life, if they look different than we do, it can push us to think about how we're considering representation.
William, welcome back. Can you hear us now?
I can hear y'all. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
So,
I moved to a different computer.
okay.
I probably could answer the last question real quick, and then I can move to this question.
Okay.
Without CETA, I would not have the experience of being in a newsroom, and that experience at age, I think it was probably 13 or 14. That's the reason why I got into communication. Even though my degree is in behavioral science, after college, I always ask God, what's the common denominator of raising the people? And it's controlling the word. And so that's why I got into owners. I saw ownership. And so I've always been involved with the Step Up program. I've always involved with young people during the summertime. I've always have taken on college interns. Um, I've always attended career days up at North High. And so those high school students can experience what we do. We created the Boss Teen Show, so those young people can create their own content. And then also right now we're in talks with a college to do even a greater partnership, and so we can get in the academic side. And so we're always looking at creating a conduit of opportunities for the next generation, because it happened for me. What steps are we going to take to increase diversity and representation of Blacks in our media outlets? Or is that the question? Or
That was the first question. We are on the
okay,
second question
okay. How
now.
do we address and confront instances of racial bias? And um, well, to me, the best way to being a former probation officer um, and working in corporate side, I mean, I love being my own boss, for real. They get to deal with all that stuff. But other than that, the best way to change the system is to be involved with the system. The only way to change it it's called implode. You actually gotta stop complaining on the outside, get involved on the inside, and use your God given talents and your ability of love will ultimately convince and change the minds of those around you. And for those that are taught that way constantly, then actually that's a burden on them. That's caused way more stress on them than it caused on us, really.
Thank you for that. Who wants to go next?
I think one of the things is that you have to be open. Being a newspaper that is 85 years old, built on the basis of the good news, Mrs. Brown started on that trail. She certainly appealed for people's rights. She was against discrimination. And so, even in that, there is good news. I spoke to a group today that wants to do a panel on diversity, and it happened to be some Jewish ladies. And back in the day, um, North Omaha, Black Omaha, was known for working arm in arm together with the Jewish faith, with the Jewish population. And we have lost that. Um, and as we talked, we were all of similar age and we could all remember when. And we talked about the fact that younger people don't have that experience and they frankly don't even see the need for it. I mean, what's to talk about? And so I think that whenever you have the opportunity to talk about racial bias, to talk about discrimination, and to cover it, especially to cover it from each of our own vantage points of our professions, is important because you never know who will hear what you say and take that to heart and either do something with it or about it.
Wow. Um, Waverly? Okay.
I would just say that in my profession, I just really make sure that if we're talking about a specific group of people, that we are doing it so and so to the book based off of our, ethics and journalism. And, things like we can't describe someone by their race unless we have like 3 identifiers, right? We can't just say, oh, there's a Black guy with dreads that, stole from a convenience store that police are looking for. Well, that could be anybody, that could be, and so just making sure that we're following those rules, just making sure that our terminology is accurate and on point. I think that for me is the best way to eliminate any perceived racial bias from viewers, right? And so that's all I'll get into on that. But yeah.
Well, thank you so much. So the next question is, how do you evaluate and prioritize the stories and issues affecting Black communities in your coverage? Before we get to that, um, oftentimes and this is, something that has been reported to me and also something that I have experienced myself. So, oftentimes when there is a need for a coverage, of a Black business or a Black subject in our community, it doesn't really get the attention, or the mainstream media doesn't necessarily go out to cover that story. And it's been a frustration in the community. And there's something, I think it's a jargon in you guys' industry that goes, if you don't bleed, it don't lead, right? If it doesn't bleed, then it doesn't lead. So this is a situation. Now the question is, how do you evaluate and prioritize the stories and issues affecting Black communities in your coverage?
I can say that because we are a community newspaper and we focus on stories affecting our community, and I think that I prioritize, sometimes on the fly, the things that are hot buttons in the community. We were previously a biweekly newspaper, meaning we published every 2 weeks. So it seemed as though we were publishing history and not current news. And in November of 2022, we went back to the weekly format, which is where this paper was started from. And so as things come about, um, I pay attention. And I also listen to what I call the man on the street, or keep my ear to the ground. Um, if there is a subject that appears to be warm, that everybody wants to know about, then I try to put that forward. And I try to make that front page news, if at all possible. Lately, for our community, it has been LB 1024 and the monies that could be a result of that legislative bill. And so I gave my own personal commentary as the publisher through the publisher's pen. But then I received a press release about one of the entities that was on what I call the short list, because there's not been any money given to anyone that I know of. And so there were some questions, and some other media sources kind of covered it and gave their slant. And I wanted to make sure that the facts were shared and not opinion, not what I call slanderous or one-sided, but just gave the facts so that people could evaluate for themselves. And I had a person recently say, well, I wanted to know who the so-and-sos were. I said, we'll get to that. I said, but the basic thing is that you get the basic facts so that you understand. Many times when we put personalities and faces with things, that sways people. Either they like that person, they don't like that person, they're in favor of that person, they're not. And it is important to me to give the facts. Personalities can come in later because they certainly have a place, but the facts is the most important piece.
Thank you. Monique?
Sure. This is probably going to be a little bit more difficult for me to answer because I'm not a media outlet, but I will tell you, as somebody who searches for, surfaces, and helps to make the media aware of some of those stories. When I think about how do I rank and file or prioritize, or even help a reporter understand why it's something they probably want to cover, I certainly think about that from the perspective of whoever the audience is. So if we're thinking about that audience potentially maybe being, for example, the North Omaha community, very similar to what Terry said, it's important for me to have a good pulse on what some of the hot button items are, what people are interested in knowing about, learning about, and then, bringing a potential story idea to a media outlet and helping them understand why it's important for the community to know about, learn about, get facts about, be able to sit down with the leader and talk about. So being on the other side of that world is a little bit different than it is when you're an outlet covering, but PR people also definitely have an obligation to help make the media aware of facts, of story opportunities and ideas, and why they matter in our community.
Hmm. Before we continue, I just wanted to let our audience on Facebook know that we're having some challenges with Facebook. So I posted the link to our YouTube channel. If you can join us on YouTube, that'll be amazing. Thank you so much for tuning in once again. Please click on the link that I just posted on several groups on Facebook to join us on YouTube. YouTube seems to be a little bit more stable than Facebook. Thank you for that. Getting back to our question, Waverly?
So I have kind of, as I progressed with KETV, and I think really after the George Floyd protests, I work really hard to incorporate Black voices when I can. I think, I try to do Black stories, and whether that's just a Black person talking head or, a geared to the Black community story, I try to, and not to toot my own horn, I think I do a pretty good job of doing that all year round. I will say during Black History Month, I amp it up. I don't think every single story I've done has been a Black History Month story for this month. So, but I will say that, I completely understand the frustration, and to give some perspective on how I kind of try to diversify my stories is if I go to a press conference and there are 10 men, 2 women, and out of those people, 3 of them are of color, I'm going to try to talk to a different person. I don't want to have, unless if I can, obviously, if the person I need to talk to happens to look like the other person I need to talk to, I can't help that. But if I can't help it, I try to diversify my stories. And that way, maybe I talk to a woman, and maybe the next person I talk to is, a white man. Maybe the next person I talk to is, a Black person, whomever, So I think that just having that mentality, though, in the way that you are a journalist, just naturally then diversifies your stories, because your viewers are seeing different people that are talking about the same subject, that are trying to hopefully make the community better or move a situation forward in the right direction. And so I think that that's kind of like a back burner way, an easy way you can kind of elevate your stories and create different voices. Another thing I will say is I always tell my people who ask me about stories and why stories don't get covered and things like that, I always tell people, just send them in anyways. Send in any story idea. I don't care if it's just you picking up trash at a park. We may not cover it that day, but down the line, we may need someone who is picking up trash at a park,
Right.
and so then we may call you. And so I always remind people, we're not on all, I don't know everything that's going on in the community. I have a good pulse, but I don't know every single thing. So, as much as it's my job to go out there and seek it, I think sometimes too, viewers should take a little initiative too and send it in. Maybe the reason we're not covering it is because we don't know. And I think that creates a great partnership too. I've worked really hard to create strong sources within the Black community, so that when stories do arise, they feel comfortable to come to me and say, hey, this is going on, can you help us? Or hey, this is going on, I just want to let you know about this. And so just having that two-way street, I think, is really important.
It is. I completely agree. And thanks for the work you're doing. William.
I would reinforce that it has to be a two-way street. Media can't get any information to report unless they get information from those that are creating the news. Being a radio station, we can react spontaneous to any kind of information. We can go on instantly, and so and then as far as even with TV have a limited time in which they can get information out. Where radio, we can dedicate the whole day if we wanted to. So since we are a 501 community radio station, I really try to focus on localism, and we created localism because We got commercial stations that we compete in, and we can't compete against commercial stations. So the only thing that we really can promote is localism. And so we play local music. We have local content, and we report local news. And so I get people in Douglas County Jail calling me during my show to ask me play their cousin music. And so that's how connected we are with the community. And so, and then also having relationships and growing up here, you can get other information that Miss Waverle probably can't get because we have those relationships. And so that also plays a role in prioritizing information. And then also myself, I try to get into gossip type of stories. And even though, you heard over here, I didn't want to gossip. So I try not to get in those type of stories. So because we got families out there that are sensitive and that we should be that we should show love to, especially when we're reporting information.
One of the things I think that has helped all four of us is social media. You have the ability to go live. And I mean, you can go live from wherever you're standing. If it's in the middle of the street, if it's in your office, if it's in the car. Well, they say if you see it, tell it. So I think that is another piece that is new now in the industry that maybe 10 years ago did not exist.
Yeah, that's very true. That ability to be omnichannel. You're a great example, Deb, because you run a magazine and you have got us all here going live on multiple social media channels. So just the power that that we've been able to take advantage of, I think, over the last however many 15 years that we've had social media,
Right.
And how that evolution has transpired has helped outlets for certain.
Well, I've been doing this since 2009, and Miss Sanders had one of the first community shows where I was streaming on UStream, and I had a young brother out of Morehouse that developed our app at 19 back in 2009, even before they was calling this stuff podcasts. And so Miss Sanders, right? Well, we was doing this for a while. We've been doing this for a while, going live.
And social media is very powerful. Recently, I would say a couple weeks ago, I tried to join the Nebraska News Broadcasters Association, and I sent them the inquiry. The next day, I received a call from them, and they wanted to know what I did and what Afro Swag was. But the truth is, they already knew what it was. So after the conversation and everything, I was told, we didn't even allow Omaha World Herald to join the association because they're competition. And you are also a competition. Social media is so big and impactful, and thanks, but no thanks. We will not let you join the association. So that's what I was told 2 weeks ago.
So
That's how powerful social media is.
are you talking about the Nebraska Broadcasting Association?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm a member, and it's traditional. It's traditional media, radio and TV. So that's just traditional. So it's not a slight on social media because we all use social media. By far, if you look at the statistics, radio and TV still reach the most people constantly day by day. And and like I said, it's thousands of social media, but you're using the same platform. You're using LinkedIn, or you're using Facebook, or you're using YouTube. So to diversify and to put you as a member, it will be very difficult, especially when you don't own the platform.
We have a comment from Ghost Listener 402. They said you should utilize First Sky Omaha. Real conversations take place there. And then I see You're nodding your head. William, do you have a comment on that?
Oh no, I listened to First Guy. They
Okay.
are, come on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings. They are a great asset to the community, and I support digital media constantly because again they created localism. They report what we need to hear in our community.
And then they continue, social media is good when two-way conversations. Do you guys have social media groups or convos?
I am developing that through the Omaha Star. Again, 85 years old. The things that we started out doing, if we want to remain relevant in this century, we have got to diversify, not only in what we cover, but how it's covered. If it's social media, if it is interviewing on a podcast or video cast, that is important because the people who started out with the Omaha Star is an older generation. They are not necessarily on social media. They are our avid supporters, but we also want the eyes of the next generation. And we can't do that if we just print. We have
Hmm.
to diversify and we have to be on social media. We have to be on Twitter, got to be on TikTok. You have to cover it. And yes, we are on all of those platforms.
Wow. Since you mentioned next generation, we have a question for that. Thank you so much, Monique, for helping with this. So, what advice do you have for the next generation of media professionals, our Gen Y learners?
I'm going to hop in because I am so passionate about this. And then you all have already kind of talked about it. Waverly touched on it. But the Gen Y learners, I mean, Gen Y, I don't know the whole gamut of the 25-year span off the top of my head, but I know I'm in the classroom with Gen Y learners. And it always, I always lament when I meet a senior who has not had an internship or an opportunity to work on collateral to demonstrate what they can do, because that is what each of us is going to be looking for. If we bring them on an internship and they're green and we know that, we commit to it, we know it's a time commitment, it's a coaching commitment. If you're bringing them on as a hire and you need them to hit that ground running and be ready to support your team, we need to be able to take a peek at your talent. You need to be ready to show it off. So portfolios are immensely important. And if you don't have the opportunity to engage in an internship, students have got to put their heart and soul into the work that they're getting in terms of classroom assignments and populate a portfolio. It is one of the best ways to be able to land that true first gig that could be a door opener for a number of other opportunities. But that is my big one, because I see that more often than I think we should see it, where there's nothing that a Gen Y learner who has gone through an entire college program can show me.
That's right.
I am going to piggyback on what Monique said. Opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. Not only should young people take advantage, but we, as I'm going to say, the elders or the more experienced people on the planet about what we're doing, give that opportunity. That's what junior journalism, junior communicators is about. And I think that the younger, the better. I'm
Mhm.
going to give a shameless plug to my daughter, who is a national communicator. She started out with a wooden spoon in the kitchen in our faces. This is Donna Burns. That was her alter ego, live from in the kitchen. Mommy, what do you think? And I used to say, get out of my face. But now I have to take those words back, because that served her well. And while she was playing around with it, at least she was thinking about it.
Mm.
And while that was not her major in school, she certainly did follow up with it. So whatever opportunity you get, if it's a wooden spoon in the kitchen, if it's a wire wisp in the bathroom, whatever it is, use it and get out there. If it's writing in crayon, writing on a chalkboard, storyboarding what you want to do, young people, do it. And we, as the experienced people, we need to pick up on that and encourage it.
Mhm. That's right. William Waverle.
I would recommend that they volunteer. Um, Volunteer, that's one of the best ways to learn, to get advice, and be around the elders that's in the business. They got all the connections. I like making elder calls because they got connections. And then also, like, I'll piggyback what Miss Sanders said as far as the elders, making sure that we're recognizing the God-given talents of our nieces, our nephews, our cousins, our own children, and reinforcing that so they can manifest their God-given talents. And so I think, like I said, it goes back to Waverly. It's a two-way street. Everybody got to participate.
And can I add that when young people come forward and do things, listen, this is a cash society and they need to get paid. You know, you create internships, it might
Mhm.
not be but $10, but that shows that you, as the professional, value what they are doing. And it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be hundreds, but something to show that you place a value on their time and on their commitment.
Mhm. I love that. It's so important. I sometimes, post internships in on Handshake, and yeah, it's very important to compensate the youth because at the end of the day, they're using their talent, their time, so they need to be compensated. Thank you for that. Waverly?
Yeah, so I am at Gen Y. And so
I got in trouble.
So I think that one thing that was really great for me, you brought back a memory, Terry. When I was little, I actually memorized the WWT Open, and I would stand in front of the mirror and I would do like the head turn thing, when they all would, and so when their faces would come on screen. So yeah, so I mean, it was bringing back those memories, but also I think that growing up, I had parents who told me that it was, whatever I want to do is great, that I'll be great at it, to just keep, doing what I wanted to do. And then when I got into college, I had a really great support system, professors, things like that. And one thing I will say is that news, specifically traditional TV news, is, sorry, my dog's barking, is forever changing. And I think when you look back on news, like, for example, when Julie Cornell started news, it's completely different than it is now. Even when Melissa Fry started, it's completely different than it is now. Even when I started back in 2016, it's completely different. And so just trying to navigate that as a millennial can feel hard, because I think sometimes there is a little bit of a disconnect, because maybe I'm not understanding what someone who has way more experience, that started in a different time period than me, is telling me. But then they also might not be understanding the frustrations or the overwhelming feeling that maybe I have, because the workload has changed. And so I think it's just always having those open conversations and being fully transparent, being honest about what each person, each component needs to then come together and then move forward and be successful. I think it's, I think one of the big things that gets circulated a lot in news is you have to pay your dues when you come in. And that means like you're still eating ramen noodles and you're in college and you're working the, D shift or whatever. And it's like that conversation has kind of changed where I'm seeing young people younger than me coming into the news business and they're saying, no, I'm not working. I'm not doing a job that I should getting paid more for that I'm doing for just like, $500 above the poverty line. I mean, I don't know, but it's interesting to see where someone like me who came in and, paid those kinds of dues to look at the younger people who are coming in. And it's inspiring to me because it gives me confidence of like, well, if they're doing it and they're 22 years old and this is their first job out of school, I surely can do it. And I've been working, I'm 28. So I don't know. All of it's kind of just interesting and different.
In all fairness, their math is different though, Waverly, because they're looking like, okay, so it's the Great Recession.
Right.
People aren't having 9 children anymore. So either they want me to work here or not.
Right.
What y'all got?
Right on. One more question and then we'll wrap up. So how do you respond to and address public criticism and concerns regarding your representation and coverage of Black people and issues? If there are any criticism and concern that you have experienced, can you share that with us?
I get criticism. Oh, go ahead, Waverly.
Okay, nope. I would say I will. I think that going back to George Floyd, I think that really turned our newsroom, and I'm sure I could, I'm not going to assume for other newsrooms, but definitely our newsroom, just from my perspective, kind of turned us on our head a little bit. We were getting a lot of messages. I personally was getting a lot of messages saying, we want to see more Black people. And we don't just want you to come to North Omaha when there's a shooting. Mm-hmm. And that was really hard to hear because personally, I had been going to North Omaha prior to George Floyd and trying to expose those stories. But I understand that if I'm part of a team that is kind of, if that's how people are feeling, then that's something that I had to take with heart. And we had conversations about, and I think that we've worked really hard. I can say our newsroom has worked really, really hard to try to share stories in ways that our traditional TV news can, that aren't just, shootings in North Omaha. One thing that people always point out, and I try to catch it every single time, and it sticks out to me because now they say it. Several people come and said, well, you only say North Omaha when there's something bad happening. There's a blah, blah, blah in North Omaha. And we don't say, oh, look at this cool thing happening in North Omaha. We say, oh, look at this cool thing happening in Omaha. And it was something that I don't think was being done maliciously. I think it was just being done. And it was just something that maybe had always kind of been done. And so we changed and we catch those things. And we try to, for every story, we try to say north, south, west, east, just to level the playing field. And so it does hurt though too, because I am from Omaha. So it hurts when people kind of come in and say, and say like, oh, hey, you guys aren't covering the story, or you guys are, racially biased. And it's like, I'm working my butt off to try to make sure we're not, but I'm, it's like, sometimes I feel like, we're never going to make everyone happy. That's just, where I feel like we're always going to be kind of this scapegoat in that sense. For every good story we do, there are probably going to be 5 bad ones, and I mean, in the sense of like an uplifting story in the community versus, something negative that gets seen a little bit more. So yeah, that's my take on that. Did I answer that question? I don't know.
It's also, let's not forget that oh, you can't hear me?
We can now.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Let's also not forget that this is also about the bottom line. It's about the rating. It's about the sensational. So and there is also competition. So whoever gets out first, correct me if I'm wrong, whoever gets out first on those shootings or those sensational stories, you know, then um, gets the greatest view or um, the the better rating. So it's also about the bottom line. Most of these mainstream media outlets are not necessarily um, co- um, community focused, you know.
I think that's an interesting perspective, because from my perspective, we are community focused.
Okay.
Unfortunately, news, it's interesting because the bottom line is ratings, but we don't just want to put something out there and say wrong, inaccurate information. Of course, based off of, ratings, we would love to be first as we get news out, but we don't want it to be inaccurate, because then we lose credibility, and then we're not community focused, because if we're not, because then it seems like we don't care. And so it's our job as journalists, especially in this medium, I can only speak for myself. It's my job as a journalist when I'm doing things is to not only get it out there fast so people know what's going on, but to get it out there accurately. And those two things are so important to me, because with a drop of a hat, if I say something wrong and it's bad wrong, I could lose my whole platform. No one's going to trust me again, And so to me, that is a way of being community focused, is that I care so much about my community that no matter what the story is, I'm getting it out there in the most accurate way based off of the facts that I've been given that I know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, though, to answer what is in the comments, people want to see coverage of different people in North Omaha and talk to the people in the barbershops. I am real guilty of that. I listen to what I hear in the street, and many times I bring that back to the publisher's pen. Um, when we talk about the good news, it's not just about the news makers. We published a story about a little girl who was 12 years old who had a book on Amazon. And I oftentimes give the example that when you talk about young people getting scholarships, they are not going to talk about who's going to Morehouse, Spelman, and Xavier. They're going to talk about who's going to Princeton, Harvard, maybe Howard, but probably not. And so, as the newspaper that publishes the good news and cites the things that are going on in the community, we have a very extensive archives. And as we go back through the archives, people call and say, well, you did a story on my grandmother in 1952. Can I have a copy of that? We have the ability to go back and find that. But that just goes to show that we featured everybody. Mrs. Brown used to go to every baby dedication, every church tea, every fashion show. She was always there. And it was always covered pictorially. Yeah, Mrs. Brown was exhausted. You're right. And I'm trying to follow in her exhaustive footsteps and be there. But it is important. If you don't show up, you can't get the story. And if you don't show up, people are critical. Well, we didn't see you there. Where were you? And so for me and the medium that I represent, and I think Waverle too, people see you in the grocery store and want to accost you about something you said, something you did, and maybe it wasn't even you, maybe it was a comrade, or it was just the policy of the station, but people don't get that. They only know who they see and know who is on camera or who is in print, and that's who they go after. And sometimes that is a casualty, and sometimes it's uplifting, but sometimes it's not.
Well, it's 8:05. We are at the top of the hour. Do we have any more comments?
I can before I get off. Um, Being from this community, and I'm not a trained journalist. My degree is in behavioral science. I consider our radio station a research radio station. Our goal is to modify behavior, and so I do specific things specifically to modify behavior. So I'm not a trained journalist, and so I do get emotional, and everything else that human beings exhibit. But one thing that I realize, um, and because I went to media law school, um, so everything that I do say, even though I might get emotional, is factual. Because again, I do not want to get sued, and then also I do not want to put out the wrong information on anyone, even though I might have energy when I express my adjective, verbs, and nouns. Uh, and so I want to encourage Waverly, especially the minority journalists, to connect with the native journalists like myself, Miss Sanders, Miss Farmer, those that are from the community, so we can develop a better relationship. So you don't have to go through those hurdles um, where we already have those kind of connections. I think that's important that we develop a relationship with native journalists, with network journalists. Then we won't have this problem, and then we get better stories. We can be that conduit from the native journalists, the grassroots journalists. We can be the conduit also. And so I think from a PR perspective, I know for Ms. Farmer that that's what you do. Um, I think that's what we need to develop because and then we can recognize the next generation of talent. One of the things that we also going to be doing is reaching out to all the journalism um, clubs in every high school and offer radio as another medium because they're already doing the newspaper and the digital medium, but now we can add the radio piece to the process, and also our goal is to get a HD transmitter, and once we raise enough money to get the HD transmitter, we're going to have youth programming, and so our youth in our community are going to have create their own voice, and so I think that's the real key to recruiting the next generation of journalism, but also to decrease all the ills in our community because young people will have a voice uh, to dictate their future.
Thank you, William King. Any more comments before we go?
I think this has been a great conversation. Um, and I think the fact that we are all from different mediums and we are all different generations,
Mm-hmm.
and we and our mediums, while they are related, are not. But I think that it also lends itself to show how we can interact. And I think it would be great if we would all do one story together.
Wow.
I think that if it's something that's good news, that it can be in the paper and there's a picture showing all four of us or all five of us covering that situation, that speaks volumes. Because I think many times when you talk about the quote unquote scoop, that's the scoop. People working together and joining arms, joining forces to bring a story forward. So that would be my parting comment. I look forward to seeing y'all in the streets.
I was just hop in. I want to thank Deb for pulling this together and also just to congratulate you on getting through. I think this might be your first session quite like this. I know you've done some lives, but just pulling a group of media heads together to talk about some of our challenges, some of our aspirations, and just the ways that we're alike and different in how we're approaching some of these difficult topics in community. So congratulations on doing that. And obviously look forward to continuing the conversation offline and or online should you decide to create another iteration of something like this. So kudos to you.
Thank you. This has been amazing. Waverle, did you have any more comments?
No, I will say that I love talking. And so this was a great opportunity to give me a chance to talk. And
Thank you so
it's always
much.
great when
Thank
we
you so
can,
much.
bounce ideas off each other. So I appreciate you inviting me, and I appreciate everyone on the panel.
Well, it's been an honor to have each one of you. And let's continue the conversation like Miss Sanders said, and let's do that story. I'm going to challenge you guys. Let's not wait, or let's not do it, 3 months from now or in 6 months, but let's just do it right away. And I know a lot of people were kind of nervous to see and to witness this conversation that we're having tonight. They didn't know how it's going to go. They thought we are competitors, and it made everybody nervous. But I'm glad that you guys made it happen, and it's been positive. That's how we want this platform to be, and constructive as well. To everybody that joined us tonight, we thank you so much, whether it's on Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn. Thank you for joining. And if you are catching us in replay, please make sure you put that in the comment box so that we can acknowledge you. Till next, have a great night and happy Black History Month. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you.